control the vertical.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic Phase 1 with your host Mark. Today we're covering a series that was on BBC initially called Wessex Tales. This was a series of 6 episodes. There was only one series or season of this that aired on the BBC in 1973. First one aired on the 7th of November 1973 and then it aired weekly. Just checking, weekly until the 12th of December 1973. So 6 episodes in all. Now, I was wondering whether to actually include this because this didn't necessarily feel, from what I read about some of it, that it was necessarily in our wheelhouse of mystery, suspense, crime, and so on. Fortunately, the episode 1 of this series does fall into this. In fact, it's even got a slight folk horror vibe, so that sounds like something up our street, doesn't it? This first one, the series as a whole was up until very recently on the iPlayer, but unfortunately it's now been removed, which is a shame, because the one episode I've watched was very effective. Now, because it wasn't on the I was aware it was on the iPlayer for a very long time, and for some reason just kept putting it off. Basically because I wasn't sure if it was a good fit. But it then got removed from the iPlayer, and I researched into it and found it was a good fit, so I had to actually buy the physical discs. I bought the box set fairly cheaply off eBay, but you know, it's still a fair rarity. It is on DVD though. Now, this series actually starred people that became more famous in a lot of cases. The one we're talking about tonight contains Billy Whitelaw, who I think was well known before this. In terms of Billy Whitelaw's career internationally, I'd say her most famous role internationally was in The Omen. She played that sketchy housekeeper that turned up after one or the nanny killed herself. She's that woman, can control the dogs. Mrs. Baylock, which sounds suitably satanic. That's Billy Whitelaw. A striking looking woman, great actress, and she does a great turn in this one. But other people that went on to greater fame that were in this show include Ben Kingsley and John Hurt. So John Hurt did this before he did, for example, The Naked Civil Servant, I believe, and certainly as his turn as Caligula in I, Claudius, which made him pretty famous. And he's gone on to international. He went on to international sort of stardom. Alien, Kane in Alien, for example, things like that. He was one of the doctors, the War Doctor, and so on and so forth. John Hurt, and Jane Asher also appeared in one of the episodes. But the most famous person that appears in the one we're talking about tonight was Billy Whitelaw. The one we're talking about today is The Withered Arm. Now, these are based on a collection or some short stories by Thomas Hardy. There was a collection, I believe, called Wessex Tales, but these some of the stories in this series were borrowed from other collections as well. So I think 4 of the 6 were from Wessex towns, but 2 of the others were from different collections. Also collections of short stories by Thomas Hardy. So the Withered Arm. Now, this has got a slightly creepy, uneasy air about it. I'll give you some of the plot, but I'm not going to reveal the full thing. But enough to whet your appetite and also probably take you maybe 2/3 of the way through the story. Billy Whitelaw, right, so Thomas Hardy tended to write about 19th century sort of English provincial and rural life. He's most famous for it's probably Far From the Madding Crowd or Mayor of Casterbridge, for example. And he concerns himself with the mores and restrictions of that sort of society at this time and tries to reflect it somewhat. It's an interesting series. I think just watching the first one, I'd recommend it as a buy, to be honest. In fact, one of the stories, just looking down the list of who's in it and who adapted, one of the stories called Tragedy of Two Ambitions. That one stars John Hurt, adapted by Dennis Potter. Dennis Potter, one of the great playwrights of British TV. So that, I bet, will be a great one, he said, without ever seeing it. However, this particular one, Withered Arm, was directed by Rhys Adrian. Name I'm not familiar with. It doesn't necessarily reflect that it's not a person of no consequence. I just don't know that name. Directed by Desmond Davis. Not a fairly small cast. It's set in a place where, people have a job and that's where they are, right? And in fact, the town of Casterbridge does appear in this one. Essentially, the story begins with we see a farmer who's fairly well-to-do. For example, he has a steward looking after his farm and workers under him, returning to his manor with a new wife, a young woman who is happy to be his wife and wants to do right by him. However, we do see a woman and a young lad in like a little house, a single room house pretty much, and the lad just goes out and watches the farmer and his new wife drive past. The new wife does notice he hasn't got any shoes. But we find out the woman actually, Billy Whitelaw's character, actually sent out the lad to observe and see what's going on. It does transpire that this is the previous wife of this farmer, and indeed this boy is his son. I believe it's his wife. It could be a common law wife. I don't actually know. I couldn't work that out. In some comments I read about it was his wife. But anyway, she is sort of a peasant woman, so I suspect it's not that, it's not a formal marriage or anything like that. I suspect it's that sort of situation. Indeed, the farmer never actually acknowledges her, apart from very close to the end, which I won't spoil. But she is jealous of the new wife. But even though she doesn't say much, it's conveyed through the acting that this woman is angry about this. However, she does not act on it specifically, explicitly. What happens is, when she's sleeping that night, she has a dream where some sort of weird succubus ghost, the apparition of the new wife, comes and taunts her in her bed, like waving her hand around, as if to show off her wedding ring to Billy Whitelaw's character. However, Billy Whitelaw's character reacts, grabs the arm, scratches it, sticks her nails in basically into the arm, and wakes up the next morning kind of in a sweat, and is not very happy about that dream, but just puts it behind her. However, we do find out the new wife now has marks on her arm, which no doctor seems to be able to cure. The new wife does actually go visit her and her son, introducing herself to all the tenants on the farm, and she does come across as kindly and a nice woman. actually offers some new shoes for the boy, which are taken. But Billy Whitelaw is kind of pensive about talking to her, and the new wife gets the impression she just isn't liked by her. But actually, Billy Whitelaw does actually like her, and kind of regrets what's happened. And then it transpires she finds out about the arm. The arm is also now driving a wedge between her and her husband. Her husband can't bear to look at it, and introduces a coldness to the marriage. And the new wife does not know what to do. In fact, she asks Billy Whitelaw what she can do, who is kind of keen to help, and actually takes her on a long walk to go visit a sort of local healing man called they actually call him Conjurer, Conjurer so-and-so, who says, "Oh no, this is someone, you have an enemy." And she's like, "I have no enemies." And he goes, "No, this is not a normal thing. I'm not sure, it's beyond my powers to help." And he actually mixes an egg into a glass of water and says, "Look in there, you will see the face of your enemy." And we do actually see her looking in the glass and suddenly turn around and look straight at Billy Whitelaw, recognise that. Billy Whitelaw doesn't know why she's looking at her. She's waiting outside. She just looks back. And then that introduces an issue between these. Anyway, this flows on. This becomes the sins of the adults perpetrate onto the children. Hatred perpetrates hatred. Bad feeling perpetrates bad things happening, is the kind of gist of it. I won't spoil it, but the basically in the end the farmer does turn her and her son out, so they have to move on. But the wife is sort of distraught because she wants the woman to try and help her with her issue on her arm. The basically 4 welts, the fingerprints basically of the woman, are sort of making the arm fester and get worse and worse. And it goes on. It's really good. It's a 50-minute episode. It doesn't feel extended or unnecessarily drawn out. I think they filled the time very well, so I assume all episodes are about that length. So it's a big recommend. It's a shame it's still not on the iPlayer. It's good. The vibe of it is quite, if you're used to the Christmas Ghost Story for Christmas kind of things that the BBC do when they're doing around time, the vibe is very similar, as is most of the serious drama from certainly historical drama from the BBC at this time. So it had that same vibe. Acting's really good. All the characters play their parts well. I liked it throughout. Billy Whitelaw in particular was excellent, and there's a constant refraining shot of her. We see a shot of her milking a cow. But while she's milking the cow, she's kind of looking over her shoulder, looking straight at the camera, in effect. Like she's watching something, she's observing from a distance. And they keep repeating this shot throughout the episode, and it's quite effective. So yeah, I enjoyed this one. Recommend from me. It's borderline to whether the rest of the episode, well, in fact, I'm pretty sure the rest of the episodes are not within our usual wheelhouse. However, this one is. It definitely had a sort of folk horror vibe. Her, going to a local conjurer to get help. The fact it's, she's cursed in effect, adds to that sort of witchery stroke bad feeling kind of thing. I don't think this is witchcraft, by the way. This is just, a crystallization of a feeling, involuntary. Subconscious, unconscious. It was done in a dream. It wasn't specifically, explicitly cast as a curse or anything like that, but it is kind of a curse. So, I quite enjoyed this one, and it's a recommend for me. Anyway, I think that's about it for me. I don't want to spoil the rest of the episode, so I'll say goodbye. However, before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you. Until next week at this same time.
when the control voice will take you to